what was going on is we're learning to control the logic center of the brain instead of allowing our fight or flight to kick on completely.
Yeah.
We're able to make logical decisions. In don't shoot decisions, the breathing is the difference between killing a civilian / child and killing an actual insurgent.
Hey, everyone. When I first started this podcast, my first guest, who, like, my first two episodes were just me kind of talking, and my first guest ever was this superhero named Chris Barthelme. And it was a really funny thing. I reached out and, I had like 2 episodes and 4 followers on Instagram, and and Chris was already, really on his way. And I reached out to him and I said, "Hey man," I said, "this is what I'm trying to do. Um, how'd you like to come on my show?" And he goes, "Well, we got a problem. I don't go on shows with people I don't know." And I said, "Well, then it sounds like we better get to know each other." And so that's what we did. And we had like a 2-hour conversation. He said, "Okay, let's go. I'm doing this." So not only is Chris Barthelme the first guest on the show, he's also the first 2-time guest on the show. Guys, you're gonna love this interview. I'm telling you, this guy is he's just a star. He's such a good human being, and a man that I align with in pretty much every way in terms of our moral code. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. New episode, Army of Great Men. Let's go. Chris, welcome back.
I'm glad to be here. I didn't realize I was the first 2-time guest. I knew I was the first guest overall, but I was like, the first 2-time guest. Man, I'm just hitting the first with you on this one.
Just hitting the first. That's right. Yeah. Way to go. And it's been about, I don't know, probably about a year, actually, almost probably to the day since you joined me the last time. And I think for both of us, a lot of things have changed. I know I'm holding a copy of a pretty good book right here that you happen
my
to write.
first book, right?
First
Yeah.
book. And and I just saw on Instagram that book number 2 is coming out right away. So jeepers, man, you're rolling. Tell us how the first book went. How was that experience? What was it like to write that first book, and what's the response been?
So I was pushed by a lot of people. I have a lot of stories in life, so to speak. We talked the last time we dove into, one of my real painful stories of losing Rodriguez, and then some of my other stories of being a ranger instructor, right? And so a lot of people heard that story and they're like, "I know you've got more," and I'm like, "Well, I mean, I do." They're like, "We should write a book," right? And kind of like the whole concept of true north motivation kind of coming to me in like a lucid dream. God kind of gave me this 41 days to freedom. He's like, "I want you to do a mental health challenge for people." And it's very, very important to me that we weave the Bible into everything that we do, that we weave God into everything we do. And so I was like, "Okay, let's do it." And I had kind of sat on it. What's interesting is it was like last May I started the work. Right. And it's like one of those things where you start the work and you don't gain traction, or you just don't feel like you're getting there, or you hit roadblocks. But what I found, and one of the things we talked about in the last episode, is consistently hitting that tree in the exact same spot. That's what brings the tree down. So I knew that I had to sit down every single week, put in at least an hour at a minimum every single week. And I did that. And at one point it started to pick up pace because I started to knock out some of the things that allowed bigger growth. So next thing you know, last November, I released the book. And, I didn't really expect the kind of like cult following this book has now started to gain.
Really?
And yeah, it's still small. We're still in the first 6 months of production of this book right now, right? And we're already, we're passing the 300 book mark shortly. And that's a big milestone. Most people that self-publish, they typically sell like maybe 20 to 40 copies. So I'm bridging that gap. If I can get to 1,000, we'll be in good shape to potentially get a major book deal with somebody over it. But it wasn't even about how many copies I sold. It was about how many lives I changed.
Yeah.
And I may even tear up talking about this, but I have a friend online that bought a copy for her and her daughter. and they weren't very close. They'd been not necessarily what I would call estranged, like not talking, but
Yeah.
like just a very strained relationship. And they both committed to doing the book together. And then every day they would read their chapter separately. They would do the challenge for that day, and they would come back together at night. And she said by the time they finished that book, that like they have this amazing relationship. And I tell people, it I didn't write this book for me. I've done this challenge. I've been there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I know the power of the challenge and going through all of these 41 days, and to hear clients and people that are fans on my Instagram say it changed my life. It brought me back. It gave me a better relationship with my son. It gave me a better relationship with my daughter. We are now closer because of it. I feel closer to God. It makes me emotional because that is what God intended. He spoke through me and he said, "Here's this book, you go." And it's just amazing to see what God has done through me with other people's lives. It's just absolutely phenomenal. And obviously you've started into the book, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I like, Chris, it's so interesting the way you talked about, like, it'd be easy to go, oh, I wish it had sold more copies, or I wish it had done this, or because it's so easy to focus on the goals and dreams that haven't happened yet. Because I know your goals and dreams are big, but then when you find out that, okay, I've got no publisher, I've like self-published, do this, and then the people who did read it, it's hitting them, like
Mm.
it's hitting them, and so then it just becomes a numbers game where it's just, well, no, now I just got to get more shots on goal. I just got to get more people reading this book, because the people that do, it's impacting them. It's making a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you think the way I do, in that you make a difference in one person's life. It doesn't just impact one person's life, because that person impacts a whole bunch of other people's lives. And then those people are going to go, hey, what's different about you? What just happened? And they say, well, geez, I read this book and sort of changed a couple things for me. Um, it's negative energy is contagious. Positive energy is way more contagious.
Oh, and
And when
we
you
we
get
even
that
talked
mojo
about that
going,
before. We
yeah,
talked about that last episode about how
yeah,
one person can break somebody's heart and that person turns around and breaks two people's hearts.
yeah,
We have the power inside of us to do one of two things with every interaction. We can impact that person positively and they'll impact two more, or we can impact them negatively and then they impact two more. And
yeah,
so if we go through this world trying to impact everybody we can in a positive light, you just said it, it's exponential. The growth, the amount of like positivity that spreads is absolutely phenomenal at that point,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And I think part of it too, Chris, is like the way that you talk about God. Like, you're not preachy. You're not like, you're not shoving it down people's throats, but you're just saying, look, I've done all these different things. I've tried all these different things. I've tried it this way. I've tried it that way. Well, this way worked.
Yeah, well, and
Like, it
and
probably wasn't a coincidence.
one of the things that I did on my page, and it was like shortly after you and I had recorded. You hadn't released it yet, but we had already recorded it.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think that is so very important, I think the reason why churches do not reach people as much anymore is because the priests are not vulnerable. They're not telling you that they're sinners. They're trying to be perfect. And I'll be the first person to tell you that God took this sinner, this man that has killed other human beings in combat, that has done terrible things in relationships, that has been a bad human being. And he turned my story the same as he did for Moses, the same as he did for Saul, like in the Bible, right? We had people that were Christian hunters that he turned into the people he built the kingdom off of. And
Yeah.
so anyone listening, anyone reading my book and like, well, what about me? I've got terrible stuff inside of me too.
Yeah.
And I watched that movie Conclave last night. And actually, I'm doing a reel about this, but it says that at the very beginning, he's getting ready for Conclave to start, and he says, without doubt, there would be no mystery, and there would be no reason for faith. Like, we have to have that sin for us to have the free will to choose God, which means that all of us are going to struggle with doubt and with bad things inside of us every single day. But I can promise you that if I can make my story turn around into good, anybody, no matter what and no matter how bad it is, can turn that story around into something absolutely amazing in this world.
Well, when I think, Chris, I mean, I think you really hit the nail right on the head there, because like when you look at somebody, like you look up to somebody, but like you just like you can't relate to anything they're doing because you look, well they didn't go through a divorce, they didn't do this, they didn't do this, they didn't make this mistake, and it's like, well, how do I relate to that person? One of the things that I think really draws people to your message is you've been through things that almost nobody can relate to, but then you still struggle to think with the things that we all struggle with, right? Like just on a day to day, like you're like in some ways, you've done things that thank God almost nobody else has had to endure. But as just a normal man, I mean, you have relationship issues and this and struggle and doubt and I'm sure what some days you wake up and you're in a bad mood, and some days you wake up like you're just like everybody else, and you're so open about it. Like you don't hide from any of it. There's no shame with that. And so when people hear that story, it's like, well, geez, like if this guy's going through that, maybe he can
Yeah.
relate to me. Maybe he does understand what I'm going through. And
Yeah.
I can tell you, man, like it really helps me because like I've put some posts out and some episodes out, and I think people think I've got my life more together than I actually do. Like in
Yeah.
some ways it's good, but in other ways it's still just a mess, and I don't hide from that, right? Like the struggle is what pushes you to try to improve. I mean, if everything was perfect, why would you care about trying to get better?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the thing about confidence I talk about all the time. Everyone's waiting for confidence to move on things. And I'm like, I have the confidence that I can adjust. That's all I need in this world is that I know
Yeah,
how to adjust if a problem arises. I don't have
yeah,
confidence that I know what I'm doing. I had no idea. I mean, the last time you and I talked, I had like this printed backdrop screen. I had a Blue Yeti microphone. I had no idea what I was doing. But you know what? It was doing that in those moments where I felt like I didn't know what I was doing that created the man that people see now. But that still doesn't mean that I still don't struggle. I coach on relationships all the time. I coach on self awareness. I coach on how to communicate better. But there are days where I communicate like absolute, crap with people, that I'm like, I'm frustrated because I can't get my emotions out. But what makes people relatable is when we realize that this is a cliche phrase. We put our pants on one leg at a time, the same.
yeah,
It doesn't matter what I've been through. I'm still a human being at the end of the day, and
yeah,
I will never be perfect.
yeah,
And I think that's part of the story that God had given me at the beginning. He's like, you're going to be vulnerable. I mean, it's in my book. You can read it there. It says, God says you're going to be vulnerable. And I was like, do what now? Like, you want me to do what? Like, you realize vulnerability is the open door to criticism, ridicule, shame, all sorts of other things. He said, no, you're going to. I will fight that fight for you. Right. And that's where the whole like Exodus 14:14 verse came from. The don't worry about what they're going to do to you. Let me fight that fight for you. And I think that has been the game changer is just being open, raw, and vulnerable. People are drawn to that because we need authenticity in a world that is all about sucking it in and making themselves look amazing on Instagram when in real life they have a beer gut. You know what I mean? Like that authenticity is absolutely spot on perfect for doing that. And I think that's what made your page finally start taking off
yeah,
because you weren't hiding yourself as a Christian behind things anymore. You said, screw it. I'm going to put it online where people can see. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of my faith. And look
yeah,
what happened to your page, right? So
yeah,
tell me about that. Tell me how that all came about, man.
yeah. So I accidentally got baptized.
Accidentally. Okay.
It was like it was the craziest thing. So like I've been on this spiritual journey, like off and on my whole life, but really digging in over the last, year and a half. And I've been like praying and praying and praying. And like the truth is like it felt like my prayers weren't being answered. And it's not like my life wasn't bad. Like I could tell that sort of, God was doing his thing in the background, but it was like, hey man, like I'm ready for more. Like, let's go. And then I tried this thing where um like I saw some story about some celebrity who sold their soul to the devil, and I'm like, well, why don't we ever hear stories about people selling their soul to Jesus doing that? And so I wrote this letter, and I didn't sell it. I gave it. Like the letter is like right there. It's right beside me. And it's basically just saying like, okay, like God, I'm yours. Like use me to help you. And the prayer that I've been saying over and over and over is the prayer of Jabez, where for those that don't know, like look it up. It's a great prayer, but basically it's, God, help me grow my territory so I can help you grow yours. Right? Help me with my abundance, my reach, my everything, because I want to help people. So help me help you is basically what the prayer is all about. And my territory was just not growing. Like it just wasn't growing. And that's not why I got baptized, but I'll tell you the story. So like a really good friend of mine named Art, who he's a former pastor and he actually works for the company that I have with my day job, and an amazing man, just a really, really good human being. And he's been sort of reaching out and coaching me on some faith-based stuff. And he had seen some of the things on my podcast and he went, geez, like this guy might be able to reach some people. Like he sort of put me under his wing a little bit and tried to help me. So then Easter Sunday, he invites me to church, and I'd been to church in 100 years. And so my girlfriend and I went and joined Art and his family. And then the pastor gets up and he starts telling this story about this guy who got baptized, this story in the Bible about, well, why don't I get by? Hey, there's some water. Hey, there's some water. And he keeps going through this story. And so they've got these like tubs up on the stage. And then like the more he talked, like it sounded like he was talking like right to me. Like everything he was saying, he was talking right to me. My girlfriend even looked at me and she goes, is he talking to you? I'm like, yeah, it kind of feels like he's talking to me. And then I start making these excuses. And so like the first excuse I had was, well, I didn't bring any clothes. I can't get baptized. And then the pastor says, so right now you're probably thinking, I didn't bring any clothes. I can't get baptized. Don't worry about it.
That's
We
God
have,
going like this. He's like,
yeah,
hey, you need
exactly.
to get
Exactly.
baptized, buddy.
And he goes, don't worry about it. We got clothes for you. And then I'm thinking, okay, well, I'd like to do this when like a couple of my really good friends are here. And the pastor goes, so right now you're probably thinking, well, I'm not going to do this because like I don't have all my friends here. I'm going, jeepers, this guy like he living in my brain right now. And then like it's every excuse I'm making up, he says like 10 seconds later. And then I turn to Art and I'm like, do they do this every week? like maybe I'll come do this next week. And he goes, no, they just do it a few times a year. I'm like, oh, okay. And and then the pastor sort of goes away, and then the band leader gets up and he starts talking, and he goes, okay, so like now, like, you're probably starting to feel a little uncomfortable right now. You're sitting in your chair. He goes, I bet your palms are sweaty. And I look down, I go, ah, crap, my palms are sweaty. And he goes, I bet your heart's pounding right out of your chest right now, isn't it? Yeah, that's happening too. And then I just went, okay, enough. Like, how am I going to fight this? And I kissed my girlfriend on the cheek and I walked to the back of the room to get in line. And I'm sure she was just, going crazy. And so then as I'm walking back, I'm thinking, like I've been asking so much of God. Like I'm just asking and asking and asking and asking. And the things I'm asking for, they're not small. Like I'm asking for really big things. This is the least I can do. Like commit, like enough, commit. And so I get out there and I'm just about to go out on the stage to get baptized, and I get this tap on my shoulder, and it's Art, the guy who brought me. And he goes, hey, can I baptize you? Because he's a former like he can do it. And I went, are you serious? I said, yes, for sure. So I got to get baptized by like one of my great friends, like a man that I just, respect to, to the moon and back. And so I got baptized, and that was really cool. And then right after, like I get out of the tub, and then this lady's like, Art, wait. And he looks, and his daughter, his 14-year-old daughter, was right behind me, and he didn't know, so he got to baptize his daughter next. So it was
Oh, wow.
it was such a cool day. And then and like I'm not saying that I got baptized to grow my Instagram account. Like that's not what I'm saying. Like way beyond that. But this story that I'm about to tell is pretty ridiculous. So my Instagram account would not move. It wouldn't budge. Like I'd gain a follower and then I'd lose another, and it was stuck at like 1,200 people forever. And like it just wouldn't move. My reels weren't getting any traction. The content was good. Like the people who listened to it liked it, but like it just wasn't going anywhere. And so I didn't put anything out for like, I don't know, like I put the baptism video out, and I got some nice, congratulations from some people I care about. And then I didn't put anything out for like 8 or 9 days. And then the next reel that I put out had like 70,000 views. And then the next one's like, and then like one of them just hit 1 million views. Another one's like 500,000. All of a sudden it starts like people started to see what I was doing. And then, my followers, like, so a week ago yesterday, like it only took a week. I went from 1,200 followers to 35,000 followers, just like boom. And then
Mm-hmm.
I went and I didn't even realize that like I didn't do anything after the baptism video until that. And then that was the switch. And then I went and I got really emotional because I looked and I went, okay, what's that prayer? Well, help me grow my territory so I can help you grow yours. So after, my territory would not grow. It wouldn't grow. And then I committed, I got baptized, and then all of a sudden it just goes, pew.
Well, you're speaking to something that I talk with pretty much every Christian at some point. We have a conversation. They're like, because everyone's faith, like we talked about doubt, right? We always have to have that doubt. That's where our faith is necessary.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing keeping people from being blessed in this world is not obeying God. We do. We ask a ton of him. I
Yeah.
want this, I want that. You know what he's asked us to do? Follow the guidelines, don't commit sin,
Yeah.
love me and love other people.
Yeah.
That's what he's asked for you. And he's asking for you to obey any commands that he gives, right? And you hit the nail on the head when you're like, well, I don't have any clothes, I don't have any friends here. God doesn't care about any of that stuff. He's asking for blind faith to obey. And once we start obeying those random things that he gives, and we can do it with question. We can have question and doubt in your mind because, like I said, when God's like, "You're gonna be vulnerable," I said, "Do what now?"
Yeah.
Like, I looked up, I said, "You want me to do that, right?" Like,
Yeah.
I got all like emotional because I'm like, "There's no way I can do that." But I gritted my teeth. I said, "Faith isn't about believing whether or not I should or should not. It's about obeying what I should be obeying, which is him asking me to do that." And
Yeah.
so I started being vulnerable, and literally that's when the shift happened, right? And I find it's not how we pray or what we pray for that really gets us blessed. It's obeying what he has asked of us to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of us, we like that little inner voice where, like, again, when God says, I want you to be vulnerable, my other little voice is like, no, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. Like, I got this little other thing on my shoulders saying, nope, nope, that's not what he's saying. That
Yeah.
was your voice talking. That wasn't his voice. So we have this like internal struggle going on. But in all honesty, we usually know when it's truly God's voice asking us to do something. And I think you felt that when you were getting ready to get baptized and you're like, no, because I don't have clothes. No, I don't have friends. And then you were like, no, I feel like this is it. I have to do this. That's when we know it's coming from God. And when we do that, that's when it unlocks everything. Because I'm like you, I didn't step foot into a church for years. I had lost my faith along the way. You know, after years after high school, when I was confirmed in the Lutheran faith, I'd kind of lost God. I'd partying. I was having sex all the time in college. You know, I was doing all the stupid things that college kids do. I
Yeah.
just lost God. I didn't go to church anymore. It
Yeah.
wasn't until I got blown up and pushed to the side, you know, and realizing that God actually saved my life in that moment that I'm like, okay, maybe there is a God, but I still didn't have faith. It wasn't until like I started really understanding that obeying what he asked of me was the most important tool that we have to be blessed. And then all of a sudden it was like, and trust me, he's asked me to do some things that were extremely guttural and painful for me. And he's not asking that of us because he hates us. He's asking because he knows it's going to remove that thorn in our side when we're vulnerable about things, when we talk about things, when we go through stuff, when we're honest about things, even if it means at the detriment of a relationship. If we're honest and we lose that relationship, we did the right thing by God by being honest, you know? And I think that's what you're talking about is because your story sounds a lot like mine. I was getting like 1,000, you know, views per reel. And then one reel just got 74,000 overnight, one night, 74,000 views. And the next one was like 100,000. Then it was like 280,000. You know, within 2 weeks, I had reels that were hitting 1 million views,
Yeah.
you know, and I'm like, what did I do different? And then I realized it was because I finally obeyed what God had asked me, like full force, not like, you know, God has asked me to be vulnerable and I'll be vulnerable about a little bit of stuff. No, I had left all the filters at the door. I had put no more filters on any of my reels. I
Yeah.
started having higher quality audio, high quality, and I was leaving in those moments where I would stumble over a word. I was being authentic for the first time. And
Yeah.
God said, guess what? Now you can be blessed. And I think that's exactly where you're at right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the coolest thing. And like, I've been trying to think how to describe this to somebody, because like there are certain things that you go through in this life that like you just can't describe to somebody who hasn't felt it, right? And the one I
Hmm.
keep coming back to is parenthood, right? Like you can't possibly understand what it's like to love somebody so much until they put that kid in your arm, and then you're just like, oh, now I get it, right? And you know, whenever I've got a friend or somebody who's about to become a parent for the first time, I tell them that the first thing they're going to experience is that time is never the same, because like you know, 1 minute ago you weren't a dad, 1 minute later you are a dad, and then the time when you weren't a dad, even though it was only 60 seconds ago, it's a whole lifetime ago. You can't even remember what it was like to not have this person. And it's a love that you just can't describe. But every parent who's listening to this, like, oh yeah, like that's how it works.
Hmm. 100%.
That's sort of the way I would describe this, right? Like I had I had Lorenzo Alexander on the show a little while ago. So Lorenzo is a friend of mine. He played for the Buffalo Bills for a number of years. He's like an amazing man. Now uh, he's a youth football coach, and he actually involves um, scripture teachings like in each practice. They start every practice, and he said, like, we were both talking about it, like, you know, with all the things that are happening in the world today, whether you believe in God or not, like, forget about that for a second. But just like the basic like principles for how to live your life, they're gonna serve you, right? Like they're gonna serve you. And if you just start following that, eventually you're probably gonna go, well, you know, the people who put these things together, like maybe they knew something that I should probably know, right? Well, what did they know? Well, they had this relationship with God. Like that's where it came from. And so, you know, when I describe this to people, or I'm trying to describe it to people, you know, a lot of my buddies, like, you know, I was playing golf on the weekend, and I told my buddies who didn't even really know I was a Christian that this happened, and they're like, really? Like that happened? Yeah. And they sort of looked at me all kind of cockeyed.
You are the walking testament to what God can do then.
Well, yeah,
You know, and that's
that's
exactly
the
why
point.
we're able to help get people over to Christ, is that he uses us as a living testament about what obeying God does for you. And that's what he's done with
Right.
you.
Right. And it's happening all over the place, right? Like speaking of football, like did you see, you know, Ohio State this last year, right? Couldn't win,
Hmm.
couldn't win, couldn't win, couldn't win. Then all of a sudden, every single player on the roster is bowing their head before the game. You interview them, who are they thanking? Like, and it's like top to bottom, the whole team. And then they just, you know, well, we'll just go win a national championship. How'd that be? You know, like if you look for the signs, if you look for evidence that this is working, like just look at the people who are doing this and look what's happening in their lives. Like they're
Hmm.
getting better, and not just a
Well, and
little bit better, like a
a
lot
lot
better.
better. Yeah, I was gonna say it's not like we're talking about like you go from having a dollar in your bank account to $10 in your bank account. No, we're talking about massive shifts. And I think you hit one of your reels recently. I was watching. You were talking about Bible sales, and I started noticing that trend in December of last year. There were several different sources that said there is a massive uptick in Bible sales across the world. We're not just talking about the US or Canada. We're not just talking about in Europe. We're talking worldwide. There is a massive uptick in Bible sales, specifically what they call a study Bible, which gives you more in depth. People want to know more about it. And one of the biggest things I tell people is when it comes to faith, when they make fun of me, I said, look, this is how I logically break it down just to get somebody into faith. I said, so let me get this straight. You don't believe in God, and I do. If I am wrong, then I end up in the dirt, just like you. If you're wrong, you end up in hell. So at the end of the day, wouldn't it make sense to just at least follow this stuff? So that way, just in case you are wrong, you don't end up in hell for eternity. That's the first thing. And then you hit the other one is that the Bible, it realizes one key factor as human beings, and that the worst human emotion that we could ever feel is regret. And every one of the sins is trying to stop us from feeling regret. Now there are some people that go to prisons for killing people and they have no regrets, and I get that some people are just not gonna regret things. But in the all honesty, that regret is what eats at human beings for the rest of their life. is the regret of realizing that they killed someone, the regret of stealing, and what it may have done to that person. Like, God was trying to tell us, like, look, steer away from these things because they're going to cause this horrible emotion. And then it also takes away from our relationship with God.
Yeah.
Because what happens when you regret and you have shame and you hide, right?
You hide, you
All
get
God was
small.
wanting to, exactly, you get small, like you're like, I don't want anybody to know what I did, right?
Yep.
And so God knew that, number one, he didn't want us to suffer as human beings of the regret, right? And he wanted to have a closer relationship with us. So at the end of the day, if you just follow the Bible and you're wrong, you end up in the dirt. If I don't follow the Bible and I'm wrong, then I go to hell. So why not follow the Bible? Two, it's going to make me live a better, cleaner, better, like higher quality life because I have a set of morals and values that I have to live by to be in alignment with the Bible. So
Yep.
it's like, why would I not at that point? That's kind of where I had started back into Christianity, was like, okay, well, the Bible says all these things are wrong and I'll feel better if I don't do them. And,
Right.
and I'll believe in God because somebody says it. But then over time, that's the seed that God will grow over time with things like you just went through, where he's blessing you beyond belief, but it has to start somewhere. And I always say it's best to start at the premise of, well, I'll do it just so I don't have to go to hell. That's the start of it.
Yeah.
After that, the faith grows in the person. You know what I mean? I don't have to do anything. God does it for me.
Well, and like all of this, I think the resurgence in Bible sales and things like that, I think that it's reasonable to assume that the reason it's happening is that from a societal perspective, our moral code, our moral compass is just so broken, right? And so you can, as a person, as a young man, a young woman, whatever, you want to keep going through life and trying it with this lost moral compass that society keeps telling you, oh no, this is how you should do it. And you're looking going, this ain't working. And like I look at all my friends and it's not working for them either. And you just see this whole generation of people that's just lost. And that's why I think I think it's a big reason why the resurgence is happening the way it is, because people are just tired of living just in this lost way in terms of their moral compass.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 it ain't getting better, right? Like the people that were doing that, it's not getting better. And it's funny because my big, like, I've had a number of big aha moments, but one of my big aha moments, it was actually, I was doing some work with some psychedelic medicine, and I realized that I think we know who the bad guys are in this world. Like, you can see who the good guys, whether you're a Christian or not or whatever. You can kind of see, okay, these people are the bad guys. And what they're doing every day is they're trying to drive people away from a relationship with God. They're trying to vilify anything to do with faith. And so if I know they're the bad guys and they're telling me this is the enemy, this is who they're trying to get rid of, then doesn't that tell you what the answer is?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if they're telling you we don't want you doing this, and you know that they're the ones that we shouldn't be listening to, then you should definitely be listening to this, right? Like that was the big aha moment for me. And it sounds so simple when you say it, but like right now in Canada, our re-elected liberal government, one of the things that they've got on the table is they're trying to take away the charitable status for all churches of all religions.
Bad idea.
Like that's what they're trying to do, and and this is a government that spends money like, you know like, we'll get more, like, they're not doing this for financial reasons.
Well, and the other part of it too is, like you were just saying, that like society, we keep doing the same thing over and over again. It's not working, right? Why the heck that Canada like was like, oh, we hate their government, we hate our government, they're so bad, and they elect the same government again. It's like,
Oh yeah.
do you expect different results from the same? Like, it's the same type of policies that are going to go into effect, if not worse, because the new
Yeah.
guy goes, oh, now we really got him and we can go worse with it. I
Yeah.
know countless people in Canada that are like, I hate this place. I hate our government. They are
Yeah.
doing absolutely terrible things.
Yeah, it's actually insane, to the point where now, like, there's a very real movement in the West where I am to actually separate. Like we're going to be
Mm.
having a referendum here. I think it's April of 2026. So a little less than a year from now. But we're having a referendum on this. Because
Mm.
like the West is very conservative. You know, you'd fit in great up here, but you go to Toronto and you just look around, you'd be like, what am I looking
Well,
at? Like, it's insane.
are you guys going to be able to, like, we talk about it in the US all the time about Texas seceding from the union, right? Is there a possibility that Canada could fracture at some point
Oh
and
yeah.
some of the provinces could come to the US essentially?
Yeah, I don't think that will be the result. I mean, I'm sure, like, it's funny because the G7 summit is later this year. I think it's June or July in Kananaskis in Alberta, and like Kananaskis would be like it's on the short list for the most beautiful places on this planet. Like, you look around, like it looks like you're staring at like an AI photo. Like, it doesn't even look real. And so Trump's going to be there. And I'm sure he's going to make a little joke about, hey, how much you want for this place?
Yeah, that
um,
actually is a pretty good joke, like,
yeah, he's going to say it for sure. Um, I don't think Alberta and Saskatchewan would join the United States. It's possible. I like because if you took those two provinces and combined them from a per capita GDP perspective, we would be the wealthiest country on the planet.
Wow.
Like the resources we have, and instead, like, being a part of Canada, like, we're just taxed into oblivion, and like it's
Mm.
crazy. But yeah, no, that's how fractured things are. And frankly, I think it's kind of overdue, right? Like, when you're in a relationship with somebody and you have totally different values and totally different goals, why are you in a relationship with them? And I think, like, as people in Western Canada, that's sort of how we feel. I actually think in the United States, I don't even know why the United States hasn't figured some of this out. Like, it's hilarious to me that California and Texas are in the same country. Like, they couldn't be they couldn't be
Oh yeah, they are,
more
as far as
opposed.
fundamentally, they are so far apart.
Mhm.
Well, and that's where we talk about government sometimes having a little bit of overreach, like trying to do too much. And I think that's the problem, is that in California, the government is reaching into things that are taking away people's freedoms,
Oh yeah.
you know? And I guess if you want to live that way, you go to that country, that state. But the problem with people in America is when they don't like where they're at, they stay where they're at and they try to change where they're at. And that doesn't work. They try to look at New York City same way. Everybody's leaving California going to Texas, and everybody in New York's leaving to go to South Carolina. Why is it that people are leaving the Democrat run states to go to Republican run states?
Because they don't
Why
work.
is that?
Because they don't work.
And all they're going to do is do the same thing that they did in those states, is import the same laws, thinking they're going to get something different. That's the same thing Canada is doing right now,
Yeah.
putting the same laws into place, thinking, well, it's just new leadership. As long as we have new leadership, we'll be fine. No, it's the same laws. The laws
Same
are the
same
problem,
policies.
not the person. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
the policy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting time in history, and I know you'll appreciate this,
Oh
but
yeah.
like, normally in order to see something like what we're talking about happening in Canada, where we'd actually see like the nation actually fracture, normally you need a war for that to happen. Like, normally you're picking up guns for that to happen. This is going to be done with a vote, right? Like, whether it happens or not. It's so, like, as a guy who, like, I love history, I love studying history. It's actually, like, it's a fascinating time to be involved in it. It just, if we weren't so emotionally invested in it all, we could enjoy it a little more.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah,
and
no,
it's going to
it's
be,
fascinating.
history repeats itself, and you know that because you study history quite regularly, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is no different than what happened to the USSR, right?
Hmm.
You have very different groups in the different countries, like your Belaruses, your Ukraines, your Kazakhstans. Like, they were all part of a country. They were all like sovereign provinces within that country, right? And it's kind of weird to think that it could not happen to the US and to think that it could not happen to Canada. But I think you guys are closer than us, but we are getting closer every day. We're not far behind you with the way California's going one way and Texas the other. So you guys could find yourself in that same thing probably faster than us. That you're right, it fractures.
Yeah.
Now the question is it going to be fractured to the point where it's all separate countries for every single province, or is it just like the two Republican provinces go this way and everybody else go that way? What do you
Yeah.
think it's going to be?
Yeah. I don't know. Um, what I actually think will happen is, I don't think we'll actually separate, but I think what'll happen
Mm.
is the referendum will trigger a renegotiation of the way that we have our confederation set up. That's how I think it'll work, right? Because some province, like our province, we pay for so much of what happens in the country, and they don't even thank us for it. Like, it's all driven by oil, right? So we've got oil like crazy in Alberta. Like, I think it's like the second or third largest reserve on planet Earth. And Saskatchewan has a whole bunch of oil and gas too, and a bunch of other stuff. And so we fund a bunch of the stuff in Canada. Like, Quebec gets $20 billion every year from Alberta in these things called equalization payments. And so they take $20 billion a year, and then they block our oil from getting to the East Coast so we can ship it out to other markets. And Quebec actually imports a bunch of their oil from Saudi Arabia. So they take our money and they block us. And it's like, huh?
That
Yeah, it's
seems
obscene, man.
counterproductive, you know?
Well,
It seems
it's
very
just a crazy,
counterproductive.
yeah, it's just a crazy situation. But we'll get to the bottom of it. It's going to be fun to watch. Even my most left leaning friends, like this guy I work with, who, he's left of left, and I love him like family. We just disagree on a lot of things political. But even he was like, no, 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 this referendum will end up being good, right? So it's actually super interesting, and it's going to happen. And there's a couple of leaders. We've had a couple leaders in the West that have retired from politics that I think may jump back in and be helpful with that. So if we have the right champion, I think things could really move, which would be fun. But yeah, fascinating time.
It'll be interesting to watch that all happen unfold
Yeah.
on CNBC and CNN and Fox News and all that stuff.
Well,
So,
the world's paying attention for
oh
sure.
yeah.
Like, the world is paying attention. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So Chris, changing direction here a little bit. So you're about to become a two-time author, second book on the way.
Yeah.
Um, what's book number 2 about?
It's called Trigger Control. It's a way of mastering our nervous system through breath. Breath is the original title of the book was Unconscious Control, because breath is the one and only thing within our body system that is actually in the autonomic nervous system and the somatic nervous system. So
Yeah.
the completely conscious and the completely unconscious side, right? And so the book aims to really help people that have been chronically stuck in the fight or flight state. And a lot of us don't know we're doing it, right? But I now I've got so much data from coaching clients, from doing the research, from talking to neuroscientists, to talking to other therapists, psychiatrists, everybody that I've talked to, starting to really hone in on what is happening with the nervous system. I notice it all the time now, like, because fight or flight isn't something that only traumatic experienced people go through. We all go through fight or flight at some point. It's how we react to that fight or flight that's different. But I notice it, like, when somebody texts and it's individual sentences, 5 or 6 right in a row, that is actually a signal that they're in fight or flight. And once I started realizing that, and I started seeing it, because what's going on is our brain cannot make a complete thought. It has to make it sentence at a time, because we're thinking so fast that we have to write those thoughts down. We can't sit back, formulate it into a paragraph. Once I started realizing that's a sign of fight or flight, that your autonomic nervous system is kicked on, you're in the or the sympathetic side, I'm like, holy crap, everybody is like this. Then I started noticing people around that were just unable to control emotion and make bad decisions and
Yeah.
impulse decisions and whatnot. And I said, we need something to help this. So it all goes back to my military days. I tell a story in the book about, my very first raid. I was 7 days into country. I was only like 8 days with this unit. I literally got to my unit and they said, next week we're deploying. Hi. I was like, what? Pack your bags. We're leaving next week. I got there on a Thursday. By the following Thursday, I was wheels up. I was already in Kuwait, waiting to go into Iraq. Fast forward another 7 days or so, we're on our first raid, right? And we raided this house, and there was nobody, there was people in it, but they weren't insurgents. The intel was bad. No one got shot, no one got hurt, but the adrenaline rush, I realized that night that, like, I was not in control of myself. I was following orders. I was doing everything the way that they said, but I had no control over myself. And that probably was scarier than the fact that I might have gotten killed. Like, that was really scary, that I'm out of control. I'm one of those people that I don't have to be in control, but I don't want to feel completely out of control, which I
Yeah.
did, right?
Yeah.
And I started some things after that, trying to figure out what was going on, and realizing that just taking breaths, slowly helps. And what's funny is you can see it even in sports players. Like you see a guy on the mound getting ready to pitch and it's like a high stress moment. What does he do? He takes 2 or 3 really deep breaths.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And I started realizing through looking at all the athletes I've known throughout my military and college career, I started noticing that all of them naturally breathed like that.
Yeah.
Like they all would breathe very calmly, very deeply, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds out.
Yeah.
And I said, man, there's got to be something to it. Well, as I continue to try to hone this over the years, I wasn't worried about doing it for other people. I was worried about doing it for myself and for my teammates. So then I go to training. I've been to training with SEALs, Delta, Green Beret, and I don't remember which one it was really at. But in one of them, like he would talk about breathing specifically. We went through breathing exercises before going through a shoot house. And what he actually demonstrated that our accuracy in that shoot house, because they put balloons on these targets and you're supposed to only shoot the red balloons, not the green balloons or whatever color they tell you before you go in this room, right? And we would go through these shoot houses and then he would have us come back out. They would change the walls because the walls all move and do stuff so they can change the makeup. Then he would have us do all sorts of breathing techniques and go back in that same shoot house now. And our accuracy was always like 30 to 40% better.
I'm sure.
Because what was going on is we're learning to control the logic center of the brain. Instead of allowing our fight or flight to kick on completely, we're able to make logical decisions. In shoot, don't shoot decisions, the breathing is the difference between killing a civilian / child and killing an actual insurgent.
Right.
And so I used that and I started really, kind of getting all the information together into like I have a 6-week breathing protocol program in there, which talks about how to breathe for different types of environments. And then we build it into the body's systems. But then I have a 6-month, what I would call kind of like a somatic kind of outline of how to guide yourself into this place of calm and peace. And it's not about making yourself unbreakable. What it's about is learning how to not react to things, but you respond to them. Responding is taking that deep breath before you, like when someone makes me mad now, it's like, okay, I get what you're saying. Instead of being like, you shut up and like, cause when we do that, we say some things we don't mean. Yeah. Right. And it shows up for us men in relationships a lot of times, and it ruins the relationship because when we get into that fight or flight state, we're on our front foot. We feel like we're going to kill somebody. We're in a fight. Right. Why are we doing that with our girlfriends? We should be gentle with them. Yeah. Well, it comes from our nervous system being activated, not knowing how to shut it off. Breathing is the way to shut it off. So this book details all of that stuff. It's got some stuff about, my military career and some of my coaching career. But when I say I've got data on this, I've had over the last 3 years that I've been coaching very heavily in the life coaching space, I've had probably roughly 200 clients, and I started pulling all the data of what worked and didn't work. So we call it a coaching practice because we practice the art of doing this stuff on a regular basis. And I've got enough data to suggest that if you're not breathing right now, you're probably like, if you're not doing actual breath work, that you're probably going to have some bad reactions to things in life. But if you are doing your breath work, the likelihood of that like substantially drops to where you can have more fulfilling friendships, relationships, business partnerships, all sorts of stuff just by breathing. It sounds simple, doesn't it?
Well, but it makes so much sense, right? Because like if you don't have your breath, if you're out of breath and like think about like if you've ever sort of talked somebody down from a panic attack, right? Like they're panicking, they're irrational, they can't think straight. Well, what's the very first thing you do if somebody's having a panic attack?
Breathe.
Just get your breath. And then as soon as they get their breath, those irrational thoughts, they go away, the panic goes away. It's like, oh, and they're like, they're good. Or, and so further to that, like, one of my really great friends, her name is Mandy Trapp, and she's, I don't know what you call her. She's some sort of a guru. I don't know, but she's all about the breath work, right? All about the breath work. And so, like you take the extreme example when somebody's having a panic attack and okay, but then like she'll do work with people who aren't having a panic attack, but they're just a little lost and they can't find their footing. They can't, they're just trying to figure something out.
Nothing's working, but nothing's not working. It's like nothing is going right, but nothing's going wrong at the same time.
Yeah. They're just stuck and they know that there's an answer to some question, but they don't even necessarily know what the question is. And she'll take them through these guided breathwork workshops where they just go inward and they just focus on the breath and everything else gets quiet. And then all of a sudden, the question and answer gets super clear. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, right. Whether they connect with God or they're hearing this or hearing that. And actually, crazy story about that. When so last February, my we went to Hawaii. My brother's family, my sister's family, and I went to Hawaii to spread our parents' ashes because my mom died the year before, and so we were going to go
Mm-hmm.
spread the ashes of my mom and dad, and because that's where they had their honeymoon, and so we had this this great thing. So the night before we spread their ashes, my daughter, my girlfriend, and my sister went to this breath workshop. And one of the things that happens when you really quiet your breath and you really quiet everything and you just focus on the breath is you can connect with God in a different way. And
Mm.
so what happened is my daughter, I'm going to cry when I tell this story for sure. So my daughter gets a message from my mom, and the message was, "I'm going to send a turtle when you spread my ashes." And so okay, so my daughter came home and she told us, and we all like nobody really paid attention. Like we heard her say it and we listened to it, but we weren't like, oh my God, there's a turtle coming. So so then everybody takes their turn. We go to the back of the boat. We rented this awesome boat, and everybody takes their turn, and said a little thank you to Al and Gayla, and put it in the water. And so when my daughter went up to do hers, all of a sudden, like she's just about to do it, and all of a sudden the captain goes, "Hey, everybody, look, a turtle!" And this turtle, this great big turtle, just pops up like 20 feet from the boat, right there, and we all just went, "Oh!" Spreads the ashes, turtle goes away, like the hair on my arms is standing up. Um, and it was the only turtle we saw. Like it's not like we were like in turtle infested water. It was the only turtle we saw. And had my daughter not calmed her breath to hear this message, she never would have had it. So like there's so many layers to breath work. It's something that I'm fascinated by. I mean, even just like box breathing, like just do 4 4 4 4. And if you don't know what box breathing is, it's you inhale for 4, you hold for 4, you exhale for 4, and then you hold for 4, and you just keep
Yep.
right. And it could be 4 or 5, we know whatever it is. But I know soldiers use box breathing all the time. Athletes use it all the time. It's
Yep.
just instantly, just whew, everything just gets calm and quiet. I think it's a technique that everybody should be better at. Like you talk about the extreme, you're having a panic attack. Okay, this will get you here. Well, then just go further. Just okay, I'm about to do something important, right? I'm doing okay, but I'm about to do something really important. I'm heading into a really good meeting. I've got a date. I'm about to, ask a really important question. I'm about to, like, whatever it is, doesn't matter. Catch your breath. Just catch your
Mm-hmm.
breath before you go in there and watch how much better it is. I love that you're
Mm-hmm.
writing this book. I think it's
Well,
great.
and the other big thing too, the one part that I tell people is that I cannot expect my body to act in duress if I don't first do it when I'm not, right?
Yeah.
So when we practice, like if I was when I use tying shoes is probably the best example of just a lot of things, I guess. Is if I don't learn how to tie my shoes in a calm environment and repeatedly do it over and over again, when mom is screaming at me to put my shoes on to get to school, I'm like, "Ugh," right?
Yeah.
I'm all
Right.
over the place. Same thing here. I can't expect my body to naturally go into slow breathing if I haven't practiced it first. So one of the things the book talks about is make it intentional every single day, right? Get up in the morning. The very first thing that you do is you box breathe for 5 minutes. And I'm not asking for hours worth of breathing exercises. That's not at all what happens. We really just need 5 minutes a day, maybe for the first 2 weeks, then 5 minutes twice a day or 3 times a day, and slowly increase it. You'll actually find that you enjoy it so much, you'll be finding more times to do it.
Yeah.
Then, without even knowing it, that same person has practiced it in non-duress moments. They're going to get stressed about something. Someone's going to cut them off in traffic, and they'll naturally start breathing because their body understands that's the pathway to calm. I
Yeah.
don't want to, because the body doesn't want to be angry like that. We don't want to be pissed off, but the body has no idea how to get back there. But if I've practiced breath every single morning, the body's like, aha, I have a pathway to get back to calm. And it takes that pathway instead of taking the path of anger. A lot of people with anger problems are going to love this kind of book because it's going to really, really, really help them with their anger and minimizing that negative emotion that we feel.
Yeah, and what I love about it is like you don't have to like leave the house and go to a class to do this. You
No,
don't like you can be anywhere. You can be in bed, you can be in the front seat of your car, you can be at the office. Like it doesn't matter where you are. You can do it. Like anywhere you
yeah.
want.
It's
Yeah.
not like, oh man, I woke up late, so I'm not going to be able to go to the gym this morning, so I just missed the gym.
Yeah.
Like you can do breath anywhere you're at. And
Yeah.
so if you realize you didn't get up early enough to do it, well, you got a 20-minute drive in. For 5 minutes of that drive, be working on your breath. It is simple, it's easy to access, but yet no one gets taught any of this stuff. It's like, why aren't we teaching this in schools? That's a whole nother conversation. We get into hour-long conversation about why the schools are so terrible,
Oh
but we
yeah.
really need to be teaching kids how to regulate their emotions and their nervous system, because high EQ or emotional intelligence equates to high success rate in life,
Of
right?
course.
And to do that, you have to be able to regulate your nervous system and regulate your emotions. Well, if we're not teaching that, we are literally setting kids up for failure, and they're not going to get good at life. They're just
Yeah,
not.
and you make such a good point, right? Like find me a more simple concept than teaching somebody how to breathe, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
and yet like I'm willing to bet like if a million people listen to this episode, 98% of them haven't even thought of this. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like, "Oh yeah. Yeah, my breath would be pretty important," right? And it like
Mm-hmm.
and again, like this should be something that we're teaching kids in kindergarten, right? Like this should be something that like walking, like this should be something that they just it's just a part of them every day. And actually speaking of that, I know you're such a proud dad and the relationship you have with your son. How does he react when you teach him this stuff? Like how
Oh
does that
man,
go?
and I was kind of weird because I was just thinking of a story that will actually perfectly illustrate this. So,
Yeah,
him and I do like breathing exercises on a regular basis. Not like we do it every weekend or anything
sure.
and whatnot. But I've taught him how to stay calm because I mean he's got ADHD, and he had, I wouldn't say like behavioral issues or anything, but he would just get like crying for no reason over like the craziest weirdest things, and that's where I started breath work with him. But he got into a thing this last school year. So he's in fifth grade this year, last year before we went to middle school. And very first day of school, some girl had said to him, like, "Oh my gosh, you're fat." Right. And I asked him, I said, "Well, how did we handle it?" And he said, "Well, I just took a deep breath and said, 'What makes you think that I care about your opinion?'" And then just walks off like it was nothing. And the fact that he was like, I took a deep breath in and deep breath out, he already knew because I've taught him, this is what you do. When someone upsets you, you don't react immediately. You take a deep breath in, deep breath out. And he naturally did it. And he didn't even know that he had done it. All he did was tell me that he did it. He
Right.
didn't tell me, I took a deep breath so that I could stay calm. He was like, I took a deep breath and I said, what makes you think I care about your opinion? And then just walks off because he realizes that he doesn't need to hear their response because he's confident that he doesn't care. And that right there just proves that if we teach children these things, they're going to be able to react to bullies, to stressful environments much, much better. And they're going to have a lot more resilience overall.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's the only thing that's sort of sad about this is that it's not commonplace. Like it's not
Mm-mm.
that everybody isn't doing it, but it should be. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Man, I wish I know your following is growing by the minute, Chris, and I know the impact that you're making on people, but man, I like if you're listening to this episode and you haven't tuned into some of Chris's stuff, like you gotta follow him. I'll be tagging on everything on Instagram and everything, but you have so much to teach this world, and I it's how do I say this the right way? Because I don't wish anybody to have to go through the pain that you went through, but what you've chosen to do with that pain and what you've chosen to give the world that frankly you probably wouldn't have been able to give without going through that pain, it's it's remarkably inspiring and like you're just
Yeah. Well, like my
world needs
hat
more
says
like you,
right
man.
here, my hat says it right there. Iron sharpens iron. I can't
Yeah.
sharpen iron without grinding, without having that pain, that grit, that heat, that pressure. Like, yeah, when I was going through it, I hated every minute of it, every one of those experiences. But looking back, I'm grateful for every heartbreak, for every lost human being that I've had, For every bad experience and terrible thing I've done, I'm grateful because of the man it shaped me into today. So yeah, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody though. I know I've been through things that would just absolutely cripple most people. So
Well, for sure they would, and truthfully, I mean that's what happens to a lot of people who go through that stuff is they just can't recover, which is why it's just so incredibly inspiring to watch what you're doing with it. And I what I tell people all the time, I'm saying this like ever since I was a sales manager or this or that. The true definition of humility is when you can learn from somebody else's mistakes, right? Because so much of us are so arrogant. We go, oh, no, we would do it. I'd be able to do it. Well, yeah. Or just learn from somebody else's pain, learn from somebody else's experience, um, to avoid that yourself. Because you're going to, like, everybody's going to they're going to find their own pain. You don't got to go looking for it. It's going to find you at some point. But watching what you did with yours and the impact that you've made on people, we talk about that residual effect, and your residual effect is big. It's far bigger than the people that you're reaching directly, because I know that the people you're reaching are reaching others directly. So it's
absolutely.
inspiring, man. Yeah, it's awesome. Chris, we're at the top of the hour. Thank you so much for doing this, brother. I'm so proud to be your friend. It's such an honor, and I
Well, I
love the work you
appreciate
do.
you having me on again.
Yeah, brother, it's great, and I can't wait for book two. So yeah, guys, check Chris out on Instagram and his web. What's your Instagram handle, just so everybody can find it?
Just True North Motivation. True
True North
North
Motivation.
Motivation.
There
Yep.
you
And
go.
then you can find my website. You can find links to all the books that I'm writing. Everything's on there pretty much.
Yeah, and are you still doing personal coaching, one-on-one coaching?
Yeah, I'm still doing one-on-one coaching. I have a couple spots available. They fill up pretty fast though whenever I have it because my wait list gets exhausted.
Yeah,
But yeah, if you're looking for one-on-one coaching, hit me up on my Instagram, hit me up on my website, whichever one, and we can get you hooked up.
yeah, it's awesome. You'd be a great guy to learn from for sure. That
Mm-hmm.
said, another episode of Army of Great Men is in the books. Chris, thanks again. We'll chat real soon. Thanks, brother.
Mm-hmm.